Hello everyone. So welcome to the workshop. My name is TJ Abraham. I am one of the directors of iLearn IAS. Slowly for the delay we had a few technical glitches, so that is rectified. So welcome all. So this is an introductory session. So the agenda of this particular presentation or workshop is that, see, the decision to prepare for civil service is something that is a very important moment in your life. So it's very important that you need to take a truly informed decision regarding how to prepare for civil service, what institute to select, how to prepare. All those things is a very crucial decision that you need to take in your life. The major aim for this particular presentation is help you take that particular decision, which would probably be that not the most, but one of the most important decision in your life. Second thing is that we believe that when it comes to coaching institute, the faculty taking classes in that particular institute plays a very prominent role when it comes to helping you to qualify the examination. So we would like to introduce both our program as well as our faculty taking the program. So that is the major agenda of this particular program. Okay. So to start with, let me just introduce you to iLearn IAS. Okay. So as given here, we started in February 2015. We started in Trivandrum, and some of the terms that is currently popular among civil service aspirants, like terms like mentorship, answer writing practice, regular weekly tests and updates, we were the pioneers of these elements. Okay, now at that time in 2015, when we started civil service coaching, there was one major institute in Kerala, okay, a government backed institution, and the way in which the content was run there was similar to a college program. Okay. Now at that time, like we ourselves were going through the civil service preparation, and we took this particular decision to start a civil service institute. And one thing that we identified was that the preparation that was required for civil service is different from that required for what a college education. Okay. And since we ourselves has gone through this particular process, we understood that what was actually missing in the traditional civil service segment, and we brought in certain components which we believe would be really helpful for students to qualify this particular examination. And one of the elements that we introduced, we were first to introduce this particular idea, that was a mentorship program, because each individual is unique and we wanted to create a program where there would be someone for them alone to help them guide in their civil service preparation. So that is why we brought mentorship. Then without systematic test and answer writing, it would be very difficult to qualify this particular examination. We brought in the element of answer writing. So because of this, because of the new methodologies we brought, within a short span of 5 years, we had an exponential growth. Okay, from starting from a very modest batch of 25, next year we got 100, then 200, then 400, and that we had an exponential growth. Okay, so that was there, and this year we are celebrating our 100 plus selections. Okay, now last 5 years we are able to have more than 100 plus selections. So this year we are celebrating this. Okay, and this is regarding us. Okay, and in this particular workshop we will be primarily introducing our integrated prelims cum mains program. Okay, the integrated prelims cum mains program will start on coming Monday, April 19th. Okay, so that would be our first batch. Then we will have batch on May 26th. We will be having a batch. We will also having online batch. But this particular workshop is primarily to introduce you to the prelims cum mains program that we are going to start this coming Monday, that is April 19th. Okay. Now let me just introduce you to the see, this is our legacy. Like these are the 100 plus selections that we had in the last 5 years. Okay, some of the sub collectors of Kerala, like Anju KS, Madhavi Kutti MS, and Arjun Pandin, we are happy to announce that they are our students. Okay, now so let me just introduce you to our prelims cum mains program. Okay, so prelims cum mains program will start on 19th April 2021. It is an integrated program. Now what is meant by integrated program? See, when it comes to civil service coaching, we know that the exam goes in 3 stages. We have the prelims, mains and the interview. Now what some institute does is that they first cover the prelims, then they cover the mains. Okay, that is the absolutely the wrong way to approach civil service coaching. Now what we need to do is that we need to have an integrated program. What we need to be an integrated program means, when we take a subject, let's take the case of Indian economy. When that particular subject is taken, that subject need to be covered both from the prelims perspective as well as the mains perspective. When it comes to civil service, there is no separation between prelims and mains. So we have an integrated program. When a faculty takes a subject, we cover both the prelims aspect as well as the mains aspect, the objective questions as well as the written questions. Okay. Now we have 700 plus hours of classes. We provide one of the biggest number of hours when it comes to civil service coaching. Now why we have this particular program is that we want to train a student from the fundamentals to the top. So since many of the students are coming from non-humanities background, they might not be familiar with the subject that are there in civil service. So we take from 0 to 100. Okay, very systematically we take the students to the fundamentals, then the first level of advanced levels, then to the next level of advanced level. We have the best faculties of the country. Now this particular word best, okay, we are deliberately using that particular word because we are very confident about our faculties, and as part of this particular session you will also get to know, like we complete the entire syllabus and our faculties are very well versed when it comes to what civil service coaching. More than that, if you look our YouTube channel, you can also see our classes, okay, because we want you to go through our classes, be confident in our classes and then join our program. Okay. Then we have regular answer writing practice, particularly when it comes to the mains part of the syllabus. Without regular answer writing, you will not be able to qualify this particular exam. So we have regular answer writing. Every week you will have prelims test. Last week, based on the topics that is covered in the previous week, you will have prelims test every week. Once in 2 weeks, you will also have once in 2 weeks, initially it will be once in 3 weeks, you will have mains model test. Okay. Then you will have weekly mentorship session, because when it comes to, we have around 90 to 100 students in a batch. That 90 to 100 students, we will be dividing it into small groups. Okay. Each group of around 15 to 20 students, we would be allocating your mentor who have reached the interview stage. This mentor is going to be your friend, philosopher and guide when it comes to civil service preparation. Okay. Every week you will have mentorship sessions. Once in a month you will have one-on-one session. When it comes to answer writing or taking prelims test, your mentor would be there to support you. Okay. Then we have a platform called iLearn IAS Khana. Okay. In this platform, you can www.ilearnias.khana. In this particular platform, you will get current affairs content both related with prelims as well as mains. Okay. And we have our test series package. That is every year. So this November we will be starting our prelims test series. Every Sunday you will have test in UPSC model. So that test series is also part of the prelims cum mains program. So this is a comprehensive, well structured program. There is no prerequisite to join this particular program. Okay. We will, if you have not read newspaper till now, it's fine. We'll take you from zero and we will equip you with all the necessary talent as well as knowledge to qualify civil service examination. Okay. Now a quick glimpse into the civil service examination pattern. We have the preliminary examination, mains as well as the personality test. So preliminary examination every year, it's conducted in the month of June, May, June, July, that month. Okay. Normally it's in the month of June. So the preliminary examination, it's an objective paper. Okay. Like forenoon there is a 200 mark test, afternoon there is a 200 mark test. In the forenoon it would be general studies, in the afternoon it would be CSAT. CSAT is a qualifying paper. Those who qualify prelims, they will have main examination. So there are 9 papers in the main examination. So GS1, GS2, GS3 and GS4. You can see the syllabus. Okay. And you have an essay paper, 2 essays. You have 2 optional papers. Okay. Now the options that we provide in iLearn are geography, political science, international relations, sociology and Malayalam literature. Then you have a compulsory English language, compulsory English language and a compulsory Malayalam language. These are just qualifying papers. So you just need to pass these papers. Out of 300, you need to get 90 marks or 30%. So this is the main examination syllabus, and this is our new board that we introduced. So we are just getting familiar with this particular board. So sorry for the technical glitches. Okay, and finally we have what? We have the personality test. So in the personality test, you would need to go to Delhi. In front of the UPSC board, you will have the interview. This is the rough scheme of the examination. Okay. Now, to have a rough idea of monthly what is happening when it comes to your coaching in iLearn IAS, as I have said earlier, let's take this week 1, week 2, week 3 and week 4. Okay. So every week you will have prelims test, and every week you will have what? Mentorship test. Monthly you will have one-on-one sessions with your mentor, because the major philosophy that we follow is that each student is unique. Okay. So when it comes to developing their skill sets or knowledge, certain things to be what made unique. So that is why we have what? The mentorship session, because for some student one test paper would be suffice. So some 2 would be required. So for one hour of explanation would be required. For others it would be what? More than that would be required. So we need to provide the content customized to each individual, and we need to provide personal attention. That is why we are emphasizing so much on what? The mentorship session. And finally, this is the once you will have mains test once in 3 weeks. So this is the overview regarding what? 1 week of our program. So this year, since we are we have more than 100 plus selections, we are launching an all India scholarship program. Okay, so this is the diagram of the all India scholarship program. So in this all India scholarship program, the details are already updated in our website. You can just ilearnias.com. You will get a pop-up. If you click that pop-up, you will get all the details. So we are conducting the scholarship test in 3 cycles. Our first cycle is on May 1st. Okay, our second cycle is on 6th of June, and our third cycle is on what? 25th July. The reason why we are having 3 cycles is that it was communicated to us some students, the university examinations are not yet over, so they would like to take the scholarship examination after the university examination. So in this we have different categories. For example, based on the performance of the scholarship test, we will be providing 100% scholarship to the top 10 students, 50% to the next 10 and 10% to the next 10. That is regarding the open category. We have special scholarship, 100% scholarship to students belonging to scheduled tribes, scheduled castes, transgender and differently abled. Okay. We have special scholarship to students who are being recommended by their panchayat, from their panchayat or the municipality or corporation. We have special scholarship for students who are specially recommended by their principal. Okay, and we have 100% scholarship for economically weaker session. So all these details you can find it in our website. Just keep note, we have 3 cycles. The first cycle is on what? 1st May 2021. Okay. Now as I have said initially, the major agenda behind this particular workshop is that one is to help you make an informed decision when it comes to what? Choosing a civil service coaching institute, as well as what? Starting a preparation. Second is to what? Make you familiarize with our prelims cum mains program, as well as familiarize with our faculty. Okay. So when you make a choice regarding a civil service coaching institute, these are some of the things that you need to be you need to take note of. Now one is that is why we are giving this hashtag choose wisely, because please consider the following before joining a civil service coaching institute. The first point is that, see, do not join an institute based on advertisements or result claimed by the institute. Okay, now please don't join an institute purely based on advertisement, because when it comes to civil service coaching, you know that there are 3 stages: prelims, mains and interview. And sometimes what happens is that in the final stage, in the interview stage, okay, in the interview stage, an institute might sponsor the travel and stay of a student. Like as I have said, the final stage is in Delhi. Okay. And because of this particular thing, if student goes through that particular thing, that institute might claim their result, or the institute might conduct a mock interview. If a student have attended that, the institute might claim the result. So it's very important, when you see result, you need to check whether that particular student have attended only interview there, or whether they have taken, you need to check where they have taken the prelims test series, where they have undergone the prelims cum mains course. So that is what very important. In civil service, it's not difficult to what claim a result. So just don't do it based on the. Okay. Second thing, see, before you join an institute, meet the successful candidates. At least go through the interview. Just look what institute they are referring to. Okay. So meet successful candidates and other aspirants who have taken coaching in that particular institute. Freshers should make sure that the institute is following an integrated program. Now, this is very important. Some institute, they just give coaching for prelims and they might give the entire course for 10,000 rupees just. Don't join that. Unless you join an integrated program, it would be very difficult to qualify this particular examination. Again, you might need to go through the program again. Okay. Now, do not join based on a single person's advice. It is better to contact many aspirants as possible to get correct opinion. Have a clear idea of the personal attention that you can get at an institute. Okay. Don't join an institute based on the number of students that they have. It's very important that you need to cross check how much personal attention that you get. What is the size of a batch? If the batch size is high, like what is the mentorship support that you will get? What is the frequency of the mentorship support? Okay, you need to talk to students who have taken admission before you join an institute. Okay, finally, ensure that the institute conducts regular prelims and mains. Now, this is the most important thing. It's no matter how much you study, it's about how many tests you take when it comes to civil service examination. Unless you routinely take prelims and mains tests, unless you routinely practice answer writing, it's very difficult to qualify this particular examination. So the most important thing is that you need to have a mentorship based regular prelims and mains test series that need to take place as part of your program. Okay, so please keep in mind these things when you join an institute. When you join any institute, you can check with us how we are providing these. So this is very important. So this is the overview regarding the program. Now what I'll do is that we'll meet our faculties. We are not meeting all of them. Okay, we would be meeting the faculties dealing the important long topics. Okay, so first we'll start with Nikhil sir. So Nikhil sir would be introducing you to geography. Okay, we'll meet again. I'll come again to introduce with ethics. Okay, thank you.
Hello everyone. I am Nikhil. I would be teaching geography for you. Now before starting with geography, I would like to tell you one most important thing. Now one of the most important question that every aspirant asks every year, that is, I have scored 50-60% marks in 10th standard and in plus 2. I have scored 50-60% marks in college. So do I will be able to crack this particular examination? I have done my education in Malayalam medium. So whether I'll be able to get into service. So this is one of the most important question that I used to get it from the aspirants every year. Now one thing which I want to tell you is your academic background, in which medium you have taken your education, these things doesn't matter for this particular examination. Whether you have scored 50% marks in 10th plus 2 or your college, or whether you have done it in any regional language, it doesn't matter. What is the most important thing with respect to this particular examination is you should have that motivation. You should have to maintain that particular motivation from the day one of your preparation till your results are out. That is the most important thing. I have seen many aspirants coming from Malayalam medium background. I have seen aspirants who have coming from scored very less marks in degree, who are actually scored, who are actually cleared this particular examination. So trust me, it doesn't matter, your academic background doesn't matter with respect to that. That is not going to stop you from clearing this particular examination. Please keep this particular thing in mind, because this particular examination actually requires a very specific approach, a very specific study plan, and it is basically, along with the hard work, some smart work is also required for clearing this particular examination. So anyone with any academic background, how much over marks you have scored, how much over less marks you have scored in your in your school education or your college education, it doesn't matter. You can actually, anyone can actually clear this particular examination with the right approach, right? Now coming to geography, if I talk about this particular subject, geography, this is one of the most important subject for prelims as well as mains examination. Now you can see that the takeaway number one is, you can expect 20 to 30 marks in prelims and 100 marks in mains from geography portions. So geography comes in general studies paper 1, and in general studies paper 1, out of 250 marks, around 100 marks you will get it from what? You will get it from geography. And for the prelims GS paper, 20 to 30 marks you will get it from geography. And one of the most important thing with respect to this particular subject is, if you have clear-cut understanding regarding this particular subject, if you have clear-cut understanding regarding the geography concept, that will actually make the other subjects like environment, international relations, so preparation of other subjects becomes easier once you have a strong base, once you have strong foundation in this particular subject. Now, if I talk about this particular subject, the syllabus can be divided into two. We have physical geography as well as human geography. Now, if I talk about physical geography, physical geography is the study of land, water and air. What I am trying to say is, you have land, water, air, and the intersection of this we call it as biosphere. So physical geography is the study of land. Study of land we call it as lithosphere. We are trying to understand the different relief features on the earth's surface. On the earth's surface we can see different features like mountains, plateaus, plains, etc. So that study we call it as land study, we call it as lithosphere study. Now if I talk about water, like we have different features on land, like that we have different features in oceans. So which are the most important features in ocean floor? So that is actually the study of oceanography, or I can say study of hydrosphere. And the air, study of air in the sense we are actually talking about the atmosphere. The atmosphere, the layer of air which surrounds the earth from all the sides. So the study of atmosphere, we are actually talking about the study of climatic regions on the map of world. We are studying about different climatic phenomena like cyclones or different rainfall, cloud formation, etc. That is what we call it as atmosphere study, or we call it as climatology. Now these three are actually integrated, the intersection of land, water and air, where we call it as biosphere, where the life exists, where we are actually talking about the important biomes, the biomes in the sense important vegetation on the earth's surface, important soil, etc. So what is my approach in understanding, in teaching this particular subject is, for civil service examination, it's very important that you should have some logical understanding, you should have to do some analysis, because what I know that might be like in your 10th standard, most of you have studied geography till your 10th standard, and in 10th standard what happens is we will be actually mugging up the names of different types of mountains, plateaus, etc. That is how we do it for getting marks. So that kind of approach won't work with respect to this particular examination. It is very important that we should have some logical understanding. For example, if I say Himalayas, Himalayas are young fold mountains. It is very important for us to understand why Himalayas are young mountains, why Himalayas are fold mountains. Getting it? So young mountains in the sense Himalayas are actually developed 70 million years ago. Fold mountains, you have a particular reason for it. So we are actually trying to understand the different reasons, different logic, but behind any important phenomenon which is happening on the earth's surface, because that actually gives us conceptual clarity. Conceptual clarity is very important as far as civil service examination is concerned. In geography, what I can tell you, there is nothing to mug up, or there is nothing to by heart. That kind of approach won't help here. You should have some logical understanding that will actually help you to remember the information, because you have so many things, so many names, so many facts and figures that you have to remember. So what we are actually trying to do is, we are actually trying to have a structured analysis. We are actually trying to have a structured analysis of the syllabus as well as some logical understanding that will actually help an aspirant. Aspirant don't have to make that aspirant don't have to put much efforts for remembering the names, for by hearting the phenomenon, for by hearting any of the facts and figures. So that kind of approach that you will be actually considering with respect to the study of geography. Now if I talk about, so that is physical geography, we have lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere as well as the biosphere. Now if I talk about human geography is the study of population. It is study of economic activities like agriculture, industries, resources, transportation. These are the important topics with respect to human geography. Now if I talk about population is actually studied on the basis of census report. We need to understand the sex ratio, child sex ratio, literacy rate, etc. And that also I told you there is nothing to mug up, because facts and figures with respect to these, because no one can actually remember these facts and figures, it's very difficult. So we are trying to have some logical understanding, some analysis with respect to different parameters which is given in the census report, right? Now agriculture is one of the most important topic, which is for prelims as well as for the mains. We need to understand the cropping pattern, we need to understand the different technologies used in agriculture, we need to understand the major crops, their climatic conditions, which crop is actually cultivated where, what is the reason. So trying to understand the reason. For example, if I say rice is cultivated in a particular state, it is not that we need to actually mug up the name of states where rice is cultivated or wheat is cultivated. If wheat is cultivated in northwestern part of India, there is a specific logic or specific reason for it. We are trying to understand that. Now resources as well as industries, trying to understand the different resources, different industries. For example, iron ore resource, understanding where is this industries. If I talk about iron and steel industries, we have certain logic attached with the locational characteristics of industries. For example, iron and steel industry. If I talk about iron and steel industry is actually what? It is located proximate to the raw material. Wherever raw material is available, near to that we have the industries. So there is some relation between availability of raw material as well as the location of industries. But there are other factors as well. There has been a changing pattern also with respect to the locational aspect of these industries. So everything with respect to the contemporary aspect, that also will be covered as a part of the class. Now transportation in the sense we have like roadways, railways, airways, waterways. So we are trying to understand the different aspect with respect to the transportation part as well. So this is actually the subject matter with respect to geography for prelims and mains. Now we coming to the teaching methodology. I have already told you this particular subject is you need to have a conceptual clarity, that is very important for prelims as well as for mains. So what we will do is we will start it from the basics, because I know that in the last 8 years of my teaching experience with respect to civil service examination, it has been like most of the 90% of the aspirants have actually studied. Even the aspirants who took optional, they have actually studied geography till 10th standard. So what we will be doing is we will be starting we'll be starting with the very basics information with respect to this particular subject, and slowly we'll start building on that particular basics. So having the foundation, having the conceptual clarity with respect to the basic concept, it is very important as far as this particular subject is concerned. So our focus will be on having conceptual clarity. Apart from that, in the class we will be actually doing the map study, because map study it cannot be done separately. Along with the topic itself, we will cover the entire world map as well as the entire Indian map with help of logic. Map study, please understand, map study is not mugging up of names of mountains, plateaus, etc. We need to understand why a particular mountain is located at a particular place, by what process that particular mountain is formed, but what time that particular mountain is formed. That type of logical understanding is very important. So along with the syllabus, we'll be having an integrated study with respect to the concept as well as with respect to the map. So atlas study will be done, the entire world map as well as the Indian map will be covered in the class, plus we'll be analyzing the previous year question paper, that is very important, and also answer writing and current affairs. Current affairs, geographical, suppose for example, if we talk about climate, suppose we are studying about tropical cyclones, we'll understand the characteristics, the process behind the formation of tropical cyclone. Apart from that, we will also talk about the recent tropical cyclones which happened across the world as well as in India. So all the climatic phenomenon or any process, anything related to the current affairs, that also will be covered along with that particular topic. And also after each topic, I will be giving you different answer writing. For answer writing, I will be giving you questions. I will make you write answers in the class, and also we will discuss the model answer as a part of the class. So this is how the entire geography will be covered as a part of your GS program. Now I told you the questions are highly conceptual in nature, so options might be tricky. This is how the questions being asked. If you analyze the question paper, if you analyze the last 10 years question paper with respect to prelims from geography, it is basically the questions are very what examiner is asking question from the very basic concept. The examiner is not asking something which is very difficult. So an aspirant who is having a conceptual clarity can easily solve that particular question. So because questions are very easy, but the options might be tricky. So an aspirant with conceptual clarity can easily arrive at the right answer. So our focus will be on having the conceptual clarity. And also if you see another type of question, because two types of questions being asked, one is questions on concept, second is questions on map. If I talk about UPSC consistently asking question based on world map as well as Indian map. For example, any location in the news, it is important. Any major oceans or seas in the news, it is important. UPSC is asking the question like UPSC will give you a sea, for example Mediterranean Sea, can ask you which are the countries bordering Mediterranean Sea. So map based questions are very important. So the entire world map as well as Indian map, the all aspects that will be covered as a part of your class. Now this is the book list for geography. It is basically plus 1 plus 2 NCERT, that is the reference book as far as geography is concerned for prelims as well as for mains, and also selected chapters of Goching Leon, and also the class notes. So this would be fine, trust me, this would be fine as far as prelims as well as for mains. Now one of the questions that aspirants used to ask me is whether I have to read the NCERT from class 6 onwards. My answer is no. Why I'm not asking you to read the NCERT from class 6 is, it is basically the most important thing is you should have conceptual clarity. The the reference book for geography is plus 1 plus 2 NCERT, that would be fine, because there won't be any question beyond these two books. Okay, they have like 4 books, 2 NCERTs from plus 1, 2 NCERTs from plus 2, plus the entire map will be covered in the class, plus the class notes. This would be fine, this would be more than enough as far as geography is concerned. Now if you have any conceptual, so after what happens is, once I take a particular topic, I will tell you like in class 11 this chapter of NCERT you have to read. Now what happens is, once you start reading this particular NCERT, if you have any difficulty in understanding this particular topic, any particular topic, normally that won't happen because you are reading after listening to the class. So you have the lecture notes plus the handouts which is given, plus you have to read the NCERT also. But sometimes what happens is, sometimes you will be having some difficulty in understanding the concept from class 11 NCERT. In that particular case, you can go back to lower class NCERT like class 7 or class 8 NCERT, read that particular concept, have the conceptual clarity, then come back to class 11 NCERT. So you have to actually do it in a very smart way. It is not necessary that you have to read it from class 6. The only thing is, for any subject, the most important thing is conceptual clarity should be there with respect to each topic. Alright, so this is regarding the book list with respect to geography. So I hope that you might have got some idea regarding how to prepare or what to refer with respect to geography for civil service examination, prelims and mains. All right. Next, I would like to invite Shinaz sir. Shinaz sir will be giving you different aspects or how to prepare with respect to Indian polity. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikhil sir. Now let's discuss one of the most important topic that is actually required for our UPSC preparation. That is nothing other than Indian polity. So let's discuss how much important is Indian polity for UPSC preparation. Along with that, we will look into the prelims as well as the mains perspective of this examination, and what all will be the book list that is actually required for this examination. We'll also try to understand what would be our modus operandi or our strategy with respect to this particular subject. Now, if you look at the syllabus, let's try to understand the syllabus. We can see that the whole GS2 syllabus, we can see the first portion is Indian Constitution. We need to understand the historical underpinnings of the Constitution, how it got evolved into the present format, the features like amendments, the significant provisions, the basic structures, etc. Along with that, we are also supposed to understand about the functions and the responsibilities of the union and the state government. Then how the power is actually devolved between the center as well as the state, and what are the different issues associated with devolution of power. Then along with that, we will also be understanding about what the different dispute redressal mechanism that is available within our political system. We are also supposed to understand how much we have actually impaired the values of different other constitutions by comparing Indian Constitution with various other constitutions. Then we will also be looking into the functioning of the parliament and the state legislature. What is the structure of the parliament? What is the structure of the legislative system? And how business is actually conducted over there? What are the different powers for this particular organization? For example, the parliament, what are the powers of the parliament? What are the powers of the state legislatures, etc. Similarly, we will also be looking into the powers of the executive as well as the judiciary. Then we are supposed to understand about the salient features of the Representation of the People's Act. For example, very recently elections have been conducted in various states along with Kerala also. So you will see that in the constitution there are only minimal provisions with respect to elections. The most important provisions of the elections are actually identified in Representation of People's Act. So we will be looking into the salient features of Representation of People's Act. Then there are various constitutional bodies, non-constitutional bodies, etc. We try to understand how these bodies are actually appointed, who has the power to appoint them. Then what are the powers of these constitutional bodies, what are the functions of these constitutional bodies, etc. Along with that, we will also be looking into statutory, regulatory, quasi-statutory, as well as regulatory and other quasi-judicial bodies. Quasi-judicial bodies are those bodies which are not entirely judicial bodies itself, or which are certain administrative bodies which also has the powers of, which also have judicial powers. For example, TRI which is predominantly a regulatory authority, it also has judicial powers. So we will try to understand all such bodies. If you look at the previous year UPSC papers, especially the prelims paper, we will see that in 2013 about 18 questions were asked from Indian polity. 2014 11 questions were asked. 2015 12 questions. 2016 was relatively less because there was only 6 questions asked from Indian polity. But after that, in 2017 about 22 questions were asked from Indian polity alone. 18, 19 had almost the similar numbers, 13 questions were asked from Indian polity. In 2020 there were 15 questions asked. So what I am trying to emphasize over here is that every year more or less you will get about 10 to 15 questions. An average of 15 questions can be identified from Indian polity. And one advantage of this 15 question is that except one or two very difficult questions, all other questions from Indian polity are doable. That means there may be one or two questions which may be extremely difficult, but other than that, all other questions are doable. And this is one area where you put your effort and you will be considerably rewarded when it comes to the prelims as well as the mains. So in the prelims, if you are studying Indian polity in an excellent format with thorough understanding about the concepts as well as the subject, then there is high chances that you get about 13 to 14 correct answers. So that is actually very crucial with respect to many other subjects, because over other subjects there are areas where the return of investment is not as high as Indian polity. In Indian polity, you put effort, you will definitely score good marks in prelims as well as in mains. Now, if you look at the mains examination, you can see that within GS2 paper, almost 48% of the questions was from Indian polity in 2015. In 2016, almost 40%. 2017, 54%. 2018 to 2020, you can see that about 50% of the question of GS2 was from Indian polity. Okay, see, for any people who has any doubt, GS2 consists of Indian polity, social justice, governance, and international relations. Out of these four, Indian polity constitutes about 50% of the questions. And again, studying and having a proper understanding about Indian polity will definitely help you to score good marks in GS2. So in prelims, definitely 12 to 15 questions. When it comes to mains, about 50% of the mark in GS2 is from Indian polity. So I think I have clearly identified the importance of this particular subject. Okay, because it helps you to clear prelims and to score good marks in the mains. Now, what is going to be our strategy? See, here is something very much interesting that everyone has to understand. There is only one predominant reference book available for Indian polity, that is none other than Indian Polity by Lakshmikant. But most importantly, the fundamental reference book for every student who is studying UPSC examination for Indian polity should be our constitution. So having a bare act with you or having an app downloaded in your phone which consists about the provisions of Indian constitution would help you over your preparation. So one of your basic reference book would be the constitution itself along with Lakshmikant. See, Lakshmikant is actually a commentary on Indian constitution, and it has given a very fluid and very systematic commentary on Indian constitution that studying it would actually help you to understand the constitution in detail. But in order to score marks for the mains examination, studying Lakshmikant alone is not sufficient, because Lakshmikant predominantly consists of the static portion. There will be many dynamic issues associated with Indian polity. There may be various acts passed by the government. There are various policies introduced by the government, which all would be of interest to the aspirants when it comes to GS2 examination. So from where to study for those portions? See, Lakshmikant gives you a foundation on which you can actually build a thorough understanding about your Indian polity. But along with that, you need to have an understanding with respect to your current affairs. You need to understand which are the important acts that is being discussed in the parliament. You need to understand which are the important policies that is being introduced by the government or the draft bills. Because UPSC has a tendency to ask questions from the important policies, draft bills, etc. So what we do over here is that we try to incorporate these current affairs into the static portion. For example, if you are studying about the citizenship provisions in the constitution, we will be looking into part 2 of the constitution. Along with that, we will be looking into the Citizenship Act. But not only that, we will also look into the latest amendments that we have brought to the Citizenship Act to understand the dynamic nature of the citizenship. So our idea is to understand the static provisions given for Indian polity topic, along with that to get the current issues, current events that will actually bring about more marks for you in your GS2 preparation. So my strategy is predominantly, or our strategy is predominantly, to have a thorough understanding about the foundation or the basic concepts and structures, and along with that to get inputs from the current affairs, the input from issues that is happening in and around us, and to bring it to the Indian polity. And then there is one more thing that I would want you to understand, that is with respect to the usage of NCERT. See, many students normally have a tendency to read NCERT and to start your preparation. To all those people who wants to read NCERT on Indian polity, my suggestion is that don't do it at the initial stage. See, I know that reading NCERT is like the stepping stones for UPSC preparation. But when it comes to Indian polity, attend the classes, read Lakshmikant, get a thorough understanding about the constitution. Then you read NCERT. You can actually complete the NCERT within a very short span of the time. See, reading NCERT is important, but don't read at the beginning of your preparation. You attend the class, you study NCERT, and after that, that will actually help you. Then after that, you read NCERT. That will actually help you to cover the NCERT topic with much ease. Okay, so this is actually a trick that every student has to follow. Make sure that you are not actually giving too much of time and effort for NCERT at the beginning, but we could actually cover it with much simplicity at a later stage. So I hope to meet all of you in our classes, and we will have a very wonderful session with respect to Indian polity. Now I would like to introduce our next faculty, Sibyl Manha. He will be talking about economic development. Thank you.
Hello all, my name is Sibyl Manha and I am going to deal with Indian economy. Now Indian economy in the sense like I will be covering with the basic economics as well as economic development that is required for UPSC Civil Services examination. Now the introductory section here I have divided into two portions, that is one is related to that of the basic economics and the second one is related to that of the economic development. Now when it comes to basic economics, you have to understand that most of the students will not be or might not be from the economics background, and they have this particular confusion related to whether they will be able to understand the concepts related to that of economics. Now one thing that is there is like UPSC wants all students from all different streams and all different kind of subjects to come for UPSC Civil Services preparation, right? They are not making it exclusive to any particular stream of students. So as a result, when UPSC have selected the syllabus for this examination, they have taken care in order to make the subjects that can be understood by all the aspirants who are attempting this examination. So as a part of it, when it comes to economics, you just need to study the basic concepts of economics. You don't have to go into the various different theories of economics, that is at the degree level. Now UPSC is expecting you to study economics at the maximum of 12th standard level. So that is the kind of expectation that UPSC is having on you. So when it comes to that of the syllabus of basic economics, UPSC have mentioned that economic and social development, sustainable development, poverty, inclusion, demographics, social sector initiative. This is the only line that is given by UPSC in its syllabus for prelims economics. Now, based on the type of questions that they have asked and based on the kind of topics that we actually cover in basic economics, I have actually earmarked some of the important topics that we are going to discuss in our sessions. Now there you have to understand that we will be looking into the various topics that cover the most basic concepts of economics, starting from that how we calculate national income, right? We have to understand how we calculate GDP, what is GDP, what are the different methods through which we calculate GDP, because see basically in economics almost all the topics that I have mentioned here is something that you are already exposed to. That is something that you are already exposed in your day-to-day life, right? You always hear about our national growth, and you know that our national growth or our GDP growth also influences you and me, because ultimately our livelihood also is dependent upon our nation's growth, right? So we'll be looking into that aspects of what constitutes growth, what are the elements of growth, what are the different types of growth that we are currently focusing on. Now next is fiscal policy. Now that deals with, you might have heard about budget, right? What does government do in budget? They prepare the budget in a way that they mention about the kind of expenditure that they are going to make in a year, as well as the kind of income that government expects to receive. Now based on that, we have various concepts like that of fiscal deficit, that is the total kind of debt that government is having in a year. All those concepts will be covered in that particular chapter. Then we go to inflation, which is kind of a hot topic in our country, whereby every day we are concerned about rising prices of various products, including that of the vegetables, right? Because we know that once inflation is there, it is going to affect our savings, because whatever we earn, a portion of that will be consumed by inflation. So as a result, we will be discussing like what are different types of inflation, or why inflation is actually happening in an economy. What are the major factors that leads to inflation? Going down, we will move on to monetary policy, where we will be discussing about Reserve Bank of India, their policy to control money supply in our economy. Now we will be discussing about what is money supply, what constitute money supply. So such kind of basic concepts related to that of economics that is related to your day-to-day life, and something that you usually see in newspapers will be discussed in our classes. Then we will be discussing about banks. What are banks? What are the different types of banks that we have in our country? Right? What are the various problems that our banks face? Like currently we have this non-performing asset issue that you might have read in the newspaper, right? Then we'll be discussing about taxation. What are different types of taxes, right? what are indirect tax, what are direct tax, what are the new laws related to that of taxes. You might have heard about GST, what exactly is GST, how is it going to affect us, right? So that kind of topics will also be discussed. Then we have external sector, where we will be mostly discussing about foreign exchange, we will be discussing about the trade relations between India and other countries, how that trade relation will impact our currency, because see again here, you might have seen that Indian rupees exchange rate changes, right? Every day, every moment, it is keeping on changing. Now, what are the factors that lead to change in India's foreign exchange rate? How does it actually impact our trade with our countries, right? What are the various concepts related to that of the foreign exchange, whether it is useful for a country, right? How it can impact our exports and imports. So, all those kind of concepts will be dealt with in the external sector chapter. Then we have financial markets, where we will be discussing about how companies, government as well as individuals raise money in order to carry out their activities. For example, in case of government, we will have to understand like how government is raising money from the market. Are they going to banks to get money? Because in fiscal policy, we have already mentioned that government, in order to carry out their activities, they will be taking a lot of debt. So, from where they take the debt? So, that is the kind of topics that we are going to deal in financial markets chapter. So, these are the basic chapters related to that of Indian economy that we are going to discuss from the class. And you have to understand, when it comes to that of economics, as I have mentioned in the earlier stage, most of you might be having this doubt, like whether I will be able to understand economics. I am not from economics background, I am from engineering background, I do not have anything to do with that of the social sciences. So, such kind of thoughts, I guess you have to keep it aside, because mostly these kind of prejudices actually affect your approach towards the subject. If you approach the subject with an open mind, I am pretty sure that there is nothing much difficult to understand in economics. It is very simple, it is interesting, and it is something that you can relate to your day-to-day life. It is something that you can related to that of what you see around you, what happen around the world on a daily basis. So, it is very interesting. So, keep aside all these kind of prejudices that you have related to that of the economics. Now, next is our approach. Now, how do we approach this particular subject? Now, when it comes to our approach, first thing is there will be interactive slideshow, which will actually help you to understand the concepts in a better manner, because I believe like visual presentation can enhance the kind of, the way you can understand a concept. So, there is a lot of interactive slides that I have prepared for basic economics, through which you will be able to, improve the way you understand economics. Now, along with that, what I have done is I have added a lot of relatable examples in those slides, so that through those relatable examples, you will be able to have a concrete idea on those concepts, because having that concrete idea on those concepts is important. Because when it comes to UPSC's previous year questions, you will be able to see that UPSC mostly try to check your conceptual understanding of a particular topic. So, mostly we will also go through previous year questions, and through previous year questions we will ensure that you are able to understand, or your understanding of that concept is right. Clear? So, overall you will get a proper idea of the concepts, you will understand how to use that particular concept in the application level, and we will also go through previous year questions whereby that become more concrete in nature. Then we will also have one-to-one doubt clearance, because I will be available in iLearn. So, if suppose you have further doubts, then you do not have to worry, I will be available here and you can approach me and I will be clearing all your doubts in one-to-one manner. Clear? Now, that is with the basic economics, and next up we will have to discuss about economic development. Now, when it comes to economic development, there is a lot of topics that is listed by UPSC, right? Like that of Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development, etc., inclusive growth, right? Government budgeting, major crops, cropping patterns, right? Then we have food processing, then we have indirect and direct farm subsidies. Now, when it comes to the syllabus for economic development, for your easier understanding, I would say that around 50% of the portions in economic development is related to that of agriculture. Everything related to agriculture, starting from land reforms, starting from that the various inputs that we use in agriculture, like that of seeds, right, soil, fertilizers, what all things are happening in these kind of inputs, what are the various kinds of subsidy given by the government. Then after production, we will be discussing also about marketing issues, right? You might have heard about the recently issued or brought in farm bills. So what farm bill try to do, like whether it is good for our farmers or not. So all those kind of things actually is covered in the agricultural portion. The remaining 50% portion, that is related to, one is industry, right? All those aspects related to industry, starting from that of the LPG reforms, what was the kind of liberalization that happened, what are the different kinds of industrial policies that we have introduced, right? Then we have infrastructure, where we will be discussing in detail about the energy infrastructure that we currently have, the challenges that we have in energy infrastructure, as well as various schemes and policies brought in by the government. Then we have ports, roads, airports, as well as railways. For all these things, we will be discussing about what are its features, what are the challenges, what are the benefits, and what are the different schemes and policies brought in by the government. Then finally, we will have one more chapter, that is investment models, where we will be discussing about public-private partnership, what are the different models of public-private partnership, right, how we can able to do that and all those things. Now, when it comes to that of the basic economics, I have told that our approach will be to understand the concepts, right, and in order to help you understand the concepts, I have prepared all those interactive slideshow, I have prepared that kind of, relatable examples. We will be going through the previous year questions, and we will also have one-to-one doubt clearance. So there our focus will be to understand the concept really well, to make those concepts really concrete in your mind, so that you won't find it a problem in order to answer the questions that UPSC ask in prelims. But when it comes to mains, our approach would be different, because the kind of skill sets that you require for mains is different. In case of prelims, if it is conceptual, when it comes to that of mains, it is more of analytical in nature. As a result, our approach will also change, because one of the reasons why we are studying economic development and all the topics listed by UPSC is for one purpose, that is to clear mains examination. And what is mains about? It is about answer writing. So our major focus when it comes to economic development classes will be on answer writing. We will be discussing on how to write answers, how to efficiently and effectively bring in points so that you can increase the value of your answers. Because ultimately, when it comes to the examiner, they will be giving you marks based on the kind of value that you add in the paper. So as a part of that, what we will do is, instead of writing plain answers, which will look general in nature, I will be discussing a lot of statistics in the class that you can effectively use in your answers to bring more value. Clear? So that the examiner will find your answers of much higher quality than other aspirants. So we will be taking up each topic, we will be discussing all important statistics related to that topic, and then what we will do is, we will also create certain frameworks. Now what is the benefit of these frameworks? Now when it comes to mains, the kind of questions that UPSC asks is a little bit general in nature, whereby you will have to bring in a lot of content that you have studied in various portions. It may not be limited to that of economic development. Sometimes for a question in economic development, you will have to use your content that you have prepared for social justice, or sometimes for international relations, or for any other kind of topic. So you will have to bring in all kind of knowledge, and you have to consolidate in your answer sheet. Now in order to help that consolidation process, what we will do is, we will create frameworks and mind maps that allow you to consolidate information and to bring as much dimensions in your answer as required. Now that will also increase the quality of our answers, increase the number of points that you write, and increase the number of different variety of dimensions that you bring in the answers. So we will prepare mind maps as well as frameworks for those topics. And finally, we will also include maximum examples for the purpose of substantiation. Because when you write a point, and if you write an example related to that point become more concrete and more credible in nature. So these will be our approach towards that of the economic development. Now that is with the basic economics and economic development. Now I would like to introduce my fellow colleague, Shiv Prasad sir, who will be handling history.
Okay, So my name is Shivaprasad Menon. I'll be dealing with the subject of history in iLearn. Okay, so just take a brief journey through the subject of history. As you can see, this is a historical monument known as the Stonehenge, which is part of UNESCO's World Heritage Site that I've given as an image here. So let's take a journey through history now. See, let's first go through the various trends that we have perceived in the UPSC for the past 10 years. Okay, now let's look at the preliminary examination. There has been on an average of 15 questions every year in the prelims examination. So history is a very important part, out of which one might say modern India carries around 7 questions, whereas ancient medieval around 8 questions. Now there is a new entrant known as post-independence, which has been a subject matter of UPSC questions for the prelims examination, which has seen a significant rise in recent years. There are at least around 2 questions asked from that particular area. Okay, but it varies with the year. Okay, now 2018 witnessed a surge in the number of questions. So this cannot be considered as an anomaly, because in the previous year, a similar surge has been witnessed in the number of history questions. There are actually 18 questions last year. Okay, so the trends vary according to the particular year, so a candidate has to be prepared for it. Okay, now mains examination on average of 7 questions for the mains examination, in which you also have an additional entry known as world history. Okay, but recently world history has seen a significant decline in the number of questions that are there. Okay, now there are around 4 questions from modern India, 3 from ancient medieval art and culture, if there are no questions from world history. Post-independence also used to be an area of prime importance for a mains examination. Unfortunately, it has disappeared into the background over the last few years. One cannot predict the UPSC's motives and intentions, so they may reintroduce it back to the forefront. Okay, now let's first go through the reference materials. Before we go through the syllabus, let's just take a quick dive into the reference materials that one has to refer. The first being Ancient India, Old NCERT by R.S. Sharma. Very important for a UPSC candidate as far as his preparation for Ancient India is concerned. Okay, R.S. Sharma, one of the foremost historians, is also one of the board members in the NCERT. So very important member, very important historian. He has also been previously a board member of the UPSC. Okay, the next important historian being book being Satish Chandra for your medieval India preparation. Satish Chandra is also a very eminent historian. He once used to be in the panel of UPSC question making. That is why these historians carry more weightage. This is History of Medieval India is also an old NCERT textbook. Okay, you can get it online. Just type old NCERT by Satish Chandra, NCERT by R.S. Sharma. Indian art and culture. This is a recent addition to the list. In recent years, art and culture questions have been quite elusive and tricky. So this book, a selective reading of this book will help you tackle questions from that area. But I should give you a caveat and a warning. This book should be used only selectively, since it has a lot of content. Okay, and over investing in those areas may not fetch you the right returns. Okay, now what reference material as far as world history and as far as modern India is concerned, Themes in Indian History, Part 3. Okay, very important textbook, your 12th standard textbook. Okay, this is your Modern India textbook, Modern India Spectrum, Modern India by Bipan Chandra. Okay, Bipan Chandra is an old NCERT textbook. Once again, I would like to reiterate, Bipan Chandra was also a member of the UPSC question making panel at one point of time. Okay, eminent historian. This is also an old NCERT textbook. This is a new NCERT textbook. That is why there is no author given in it. Brief History of Modern India. This is a very important book. Brief History of Modern India is actually a shorter version of the larger book of Bipan Chandra, India's Struggle for Independence. Okay, so this also is a very important book. But once again, I would like to give the same caveat that I gave you before. This book has an abundance of information, so one needs to undertake a selective reading. That is why normally in my classes I disincentivize my students from taking a cover to cover reading of this particular book, because it has a lot of information and thus carries a lot of density, which will be very difficult for the student to grapple with. Okay. Now, as far as world history is concerned, you can only say that you can only call one book as a standard reference book, which is an old NCERT book written by Arjun Dev. Okay. Otherwise, class notes will suffice. Old world history over time has has carried lower weightage as far as the UPSC mains examination is concerned. It is not a topic that is covered in your prelims examination. Only ancient medieval art and culture, modern India and post-independence has witnessed questions as far as your prelims examination is concerned. World history is exclusively a topic for your mains examination. Okay. Now, let me explain my modus operandi. See, the problem with history is that it is a lengthy subject and it has a lot of information that one needs to memorize. Okay, my strategy would be to compartmentalize the subject to make your preparation much more simple. One needs to compartmentalize the subject, find out the important areas and subject matters that one needs to prioritize, and also rationalize information in such a way that one can memorize. So this is what I am trying to do through my handouts. Okay, my handouts will compartmentalize a subject to something around 80 pages. Okay, so this is how we deal with the classes. Another thing that I normally do is actually make the subject easier by utilizing maps. Okay, I'll give you a brief sample of it later on. So one needs to also use maps in order to have a firm grasp of the geographical or the firm grasp of the historical civilizations that existed during that time. Okay, so this will give you a much more simpler way to study history. Okay, now practice questions which will contain past UPSC questions. As always, every UPSC candidate must practice past questions. I will be especially giving you tailor-made answers, mains answers for examination. We will also go through the prelims questions. But preparing for your mains, preparing your mains questions is going to be a tedious task, odious task that I will make simpler by giving you the requisite answers in your class. We will have an interactive session in that particular part. Okay. Revision notes comprising of key points. This will majorly be in a presentation mode. See, after I finish my classes, I will give you a set of revision notes which will have only key points. So when you are in the verge of entering your examination hall, all you need to do is refer these notes so that you can have a quicker grasp of the subject. You don't need to go through the tedious process of revising the entire material. So this is the hand holding that I'll be doing from my part. Okay. Now, let me just give you a sample of what I do. Okay, we'll go through the subject of modern India now. I'll just give you a brief introduction there. Okay, as you see, these are all historical figures, Rani Lakshmibai, Bhagat Singh and all that, Jawaharlal Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose and all that. Okay, now, let's just go through the syllabus of modern India as reconfigured by me according to the number of questions raised by the UPSC from that particular area. UPSC, I have reconfigured the syllabus according to the question making that the UPSC has carried out with regard to each section. So, the first section being European penetration to India, there have been at least 5 questions from this section in your prelims examination and no question from this section so far in your mains examination. So, this section carries a big weightage as far as a candidate is concerned. This deals with the advent of Europeans into the country. You are all familiar with Vasco da Gama stepping foot in India. So, this section looks at that particular part. Okay. Now, economic history of India. I think you're all familiar with drain of wealth. The British drained our wealth. It impoverished the country, leaving very little economic wealth for the country. Okay, this process happened. This process was long drawn. It happened over a period of time, and that is why this particular area is very important. Economic history of India. This section has carried at least 4 questions for your UPSC prelims examination. At least 2 questions in your mains examination. So this section is a section that there are lots of questions which are posed for the UPSC examination. Okay. Now the third Now next is the next section is administrative changes. See, here we will be going through the careers of the various governor generals, the administrative reforms that they brought through. Let me give you an example. See, all of us are preparing for the civil service examination, I guess. Okay, civil services was an administrative reform that was introduced by the British in India. We need to have a firm understanding about the history of that evolution of that particular administrative reform. We are also familiar with land revenue systems, permanent settlement, Mahalwari, Rayatwari, etc. So these are the topics that are dealt here. Okay, now revolutionaries. See, the British consolidation in India also invited a counter reaction in the form of revolutions. Okay, you're all familiar with the revolt of 1857. Also later on, revolutionaries like Bhagat Singh took the challenge and faced the British head on, striking fear upon the hearts of the British. So this has to be also looked through. This is a very important topic which has gained importance recently in the UPSC prelims and mains examination. National movements. The most important section as far as the UPSC is concerned, at least 10 questions have been posed from this particular section for a prelims examination, but your mains has so far not touched this section. Okay, we are expecting a question for the future. Okay, now this will comprise of those national movements including non-cooperation, civil disobedience and Quit India movement. I think you are all familiar with that already. Gandhian nationalism. Gandhi is one of the key central figures of the country. Okay, so Gandhian nationalism, Gandhi's contribution in nationalism, Gandhi's philosophy, Gandhi and his relation with other national leaders, comparison of Gandhi, his philosophy with other national leaders, all these have been areas of question making for the UPSC, both for the prelims as well as your mains examination. I think except for 1 year, every single other year there has been a question raised from this section. Gandhi has always been a central key figure when it comes to making UPSC questions. Okay. Now miscellaneous topics, there will be a lot of there are a lot of array of topics which cannot be categorized into one single unit. Example, the freedom of the press, the rise of the press, okay, things like that. Okay, am I clear there? Social reforms, all this will be classified under miscellaneous topics. Okay, so I think you've got the division of the syllabus according to the questions made by the UPSC. Am I clear there? Okay, now can you tell me who this really old guy is? This long beard and his cherubic face. His name is Vasco da Gama. Okay, this is the same guy that set foot in Kozhikode, and from where India's European colonial expansion in India started. Okay, this is the journey that he took to India. This is the sample model that I wanted to show. Okay, see, if you knew that Vasco da Gama circumnavigated Africa to reach India, you would also know that he would also want certain products that were exclusively from India, like spices. You would also want to know that the Mediterranean sea route was blocked. Okay, so this is how you study this. So you are already aware about two information, that the Mediterranean sea route, the shorter sea route was blocked and he had to take a longer journey, and that he reached India after traversing through this wrong route. Okay, so this is the importance of using maps and interactive figures. Okay, you seriously should try this out. This is not being practiced by UPSC candidates. It will surely help you in your prelims examination. Okay, so we'll have such interactive maps in our sessions. Okay, now this is another example. This is India's map in the 18th century. This is the same century that the British managed to conquer vast swaths of our territory and subjugate India, bring them under colonial subjugation. See, this is the map that you see. You see a number of regional powers. These are all post-Mughal states that came about here. Okay, these are all post-Mughal states that came about here. Okay, so this is the consolidated, this is an interactive figure. But by seeing this very figure, you could also understand that there are a number of regional states like Rajputana, Hyderabad, okay, Mysore, Awadh, etc. These are all part of your syllabus. There have been questions raised from this particular section, both for your prelims as well as your mains. Only if you knew this map, you could answer that question. Am I clear there? So this is how maps will become useful. So we will take a journey through these maps. When I am dealing with for example, when I am dealing with Hyderabad, I'll tell you that Hyderabad was an empire that evolved in 1717, created by Asaf Jah I, who was a very renowned general in the Mughal army. Okay, so you'll have a more firmer understanding. You will have a clear picture. When you see the figure of Hyderabad, you can recollect all this. Okay, so there are a lot of memory techniques that we have spoken out here. So one thing that I would like to say is history is not a difficult subject. There is a lot of things to memorize, but it is not a difficult subject, but you need to compartmentalize and prioritize. Okay, that is the most important part. There is a lot of knowledge available in the market, but that needs to be briefed, and that needs to also be put in a more capsule format. This is what I'll be attempting here. So now I'd like to invite Arvind sir, who is a very renowned faculty of Environment and Science and Technology, to continue with this session.
Hello all, myself Arvind J. So I'll be introducing you the topics environment and ecology and science and technology for you. So just like every other faculty did, I would like to analyze previous year question papers to know the weightage of these two subjects. So if we go through the images, we can see that this is for environment and ecology. So we can see that till 2014, there were around questions, around 23 questions, 20 plus questions every year from 2011 to 2014. But after 2014, we can see that the average number of questions asking from environment and ecology were reduced to around on an average 15 to 16. So this is the weightage of environment and ecology in prelims exam of UPSC. And if you go to science and technology part, the same trend can be seen there. Number of questions that would be asking in prelims would be around 14 to 15. So these two subjects will combine to get you around 60 marks in prelims alone. And when it comes to mains, these two subjects come in GS paper 3, and even these two subjects carry almost same kind of weightage in mains also. So around 2 to 3 questions would be there in science and technology as well as in environment ecology. So more than mains, these two subjects are very important for you, make you to clear prelims exam. Getting it? So analyzing environment ecology means analyzing, going through the syllabus of environment ecology. And as we can see from the syllabus, this is a very short syllabus which is also very open-ended. Getting it? So these are the main items, items in syllabus of environment ecology, and it covers topics like general issues on environment ecology. General issues can be anything from a simple water pollution to global problems like global warming, and even conservation efforts should be studied, and environment and pollution and degradation is a separate topic itself, and finally we have to deal with environment impact assessment. So this is a very short syllabus and very dynamic one too, and that is the main thing that makes environment ecology very difficult subject for aspirants to prepare. And if you go to the syllabus of science and technology, so these are the syllabus of science, and this is a syllabus of science and technology, and I have divided science and technology, syllabus of science and technology into 5 areas. So this is the main thing, achievement of Indians and science and technology. This is a topic mainly for mains exam. Okay, they won't be asking anything related to achievements of Indians in prelims exam. This is very much important for mains. But these things, the science of everyday life, this is very important for prelims exam. Most of the questions that will be asking in science and technology would be coming from this area, the science of everyday life or developments and technologies in and their applications in everyday life. And third thing, indigenization of technology and developing new technology is a topic which is both important for prelims as well as mains, because if you study a thing, for example missile technology, we have to study what have India contributed in that particular technology. So just like that, when we study about biotechnology, we have to think about green revolution that happened in India. So this is a topic which is pretty much important for both prelims as well as mains. And the fourth thing, awareness in the field of IT, robotics, etc. Is mainly important for prelims. And here also current developments will be asking in your exam. So you have to focus on current affairs. And the last thing, topic related to intellectual property right, issues related to intellectual property rights. Just like the first topic, this is pretty much important for the mains exam. So this is the syllabus for science and technology, and the previous one was the syllabus for environment and ecology. So to get an idea about what would be asking from the syllabus in environment and ecology, it is important to go through the topics. So these are the topics I have divided in environment and ecology. This is the main takeaway, and we have to prepare topics like this: protected area networks, that is we have to study about topics like national park, wildlife sanctuaries, etc. And second one, there are plenty of national initiatives in India which aims at protecting all the species, all the protected areas in India. And then we have species protection, which is very, very important in prelims perspective, and basic ecology, not like the previous, prior topics. It is not important for prelims because UPSC tried to ask the least number of questions in basic ecology for the past 4 to 5 years. Then ozone depletion, global warming, biodiversity, these are small topics which are important for prelims more than in mains. So environment ecology carries more marks in prelims than in mains, just like science and technology. So we have to analyze, we have to develop a strategy in order to tackle environment ecology in prelims. So if you are there to study the n number of protected areas or the infinite number of species that are found in India, it will be very difficult for aspirants to comprehend. So we have to analyze, we have to find out a trend in which UPSC will be following every year in order to identify the focus area we have to study in prelims. Otherwise, we will lose our way in our preparation. So better to make a specific strategy for each and individual topic so that we can streamline our preparation. So I have divided, or I have come up with a strategy for species in India. So this is a trend I have found out by analyzing last 10 years question paper. See, if you look at the table, you can see that some species have been repeatedly asking by UPSC in every year. Say for example, just look at the species gharial. Gharial had been asked by UPSC in 3 different years, and in 2017 alone, gharial was asked twice. Be repeatedly asking by UPSC. So it is better to find out a trend. Was asked, and here also gharial was asked. Gharial was a question, and in the second one, gharial was again an option. So all these 3 questions, gharial was an option. So which means UPSC will be continue to pick up same species, and same for the second set of questions also. Here we have gharial, Indian wild ass and wild buffalo in this question, and here also look at the options given. Here we have the red panda, Asiatic wild ass, snow leopard, gharial. Same species have been repeated, and here also in this question also wild buffalo, wild ass were repeatedly asking. So this is what I am telling you. See, there should be a trend. We have to understand the trend that will be following by UPSC. So here in my lecture, I will be trying to follow a specific trend, or I will be lecturing you the syllabus through some trends and patterns following by UPSC. That is the only thing, or that is the only way to comprehend, analyze or study completely environment ecology. Getting it? So this is how I will be taking environment ecology classes, and this will be the overall framework we have to prepare upon a specific species that we will be discussing in the classroom. Then, so just like I have gone through all the 10 years question paper and made a list of species that will be picked up by UPSC, and this is we will call it as a superstar species list, and UPSC will be continue to ask question from this only. So this is how we will be discussing the whole of the topic environment ecology by finding out certain trends and topics. Getting it? And what is the takeaway from science and technology? After decoding the syllabus, I have divided the entire science and technology into 6 different areas, and it ranges from topics like energy, topics like space technology, and topics like defense technology, biotechnology, nanotechnology, etc. And UPSC will be, trust me, this will be the focal areas of UPSC used to pick up questions from the subject. Getting it? And especially topics like energy, space technology, biotechnologies. These 3 are the most important topics which will be following by UPSC to pick up questions. So just like I have done in environment ecology, I will be also analyzing questions and trends in these 3 subjects or these 6 areas from science and technology in order to make you understanding about the particular topic. Getting it? And what about basic science? When we talk about science and technology, aspirants will continue to ask questions regarding basic science. And my friends, basic science will be the least important topic for UPSC, because we can see that till 2030 the importance of basic science in science and technology have been continues to decrease. And even if they ask questions will be from purely what? Application in daily life nature. So for example, in physics, if they ask a basic science question, they will be asking questions from friction. Or if they ask a question from biology, they will be asking a question like vitamin deficiency diseases. Or if you used to pick up a question from chemistry, they will be asking questions like what is the difference between chemical change and physical change. So these are very fundamental questions. What you have to focus on these dynamic areas. Okay, so these are the dynamic areas we have to focus rather than the basic science textbook. So these are the strategy or way to prepare science and technology in UPSC prelims as well as in mains. So now we have to discuss about the sources. The primary sources would be iLearn's handouts. I'll be giving you thoroughly prepared extensive handouts for both science and technology and environment ecology. Getting it? And after going through the science and technology and environment handouts, you don't need to research on any other materials. So that will be the fundamental sources, primary sources. Then if you want, you can refer NCERTs, but handouts will be made based on the NCERT textbook itself. So these are the sources. Getting it? So next, I would like to introduce you TJ Abraham for getting you discuss with ethics and integrity. Thank you. See you in the classes.
Okay, so welcome to the last subject. So the last subject is GS paper 4, ethics, integrity and aptitude. Okay, so now as we have already introduced you, we have introduced you multiple papers, multiple subjects, everything. So as I have stated in the first slide, so when it comes to the UPSC examination, it is divided into 3 parts: prelims, mains and interview. Now what is the purpose of this particular examination? The purpose of this particular examination, or why UPSC conduct this particular examination, it's to identify the aptitude of the candidate, whether that particular candidate has the aptitude to become a civil servant. So that is the reason why we have this particular selection process. So the question is that aptitude means if the right training and other things are given, would he be able to service country? So that is the question that we have. But as we have come across multiple situations in our country, a civil servant, he can use his aptitude, he can either channel it for serving the country, or he can channel it for fulfillment of his own selfish interest. He can use it for corruption, he can use it for taking bribes, he can use it for appointing his kin to important posts. So it's very important that a civil servant, he need to direct his aptitude in the right manner. And to direct the aptitude in the right manner, it's very important that civil servants need to have ethics. They need to have a right sense of what is right and what is wrong. Also, they should have the right values in them. They should be a person with integrity. They should have a character that upholds integrity. So that is why GS paper 4 is called ethics, integrity and aptitude, because we not only require people with the right aptitude, we need people with the right ethics as well as values. Only then this particular aptitude would be directed in the right manner. Okay. So it is with this particular idea, UPSC has called this particular paper General Studies paper 4, ethics, integrity and aptitude. Okay. So that is regarding this particular paper. So let's see what is UPSC's expectations regarding this particular paper. So when it comes to this particular paper, the paper is called General Studies paper 4, ethics, integrity and aptitude. So it is like this. This paper will include questions to test the candidate's attitude and approach to issues relating to integrity, probity in public life and his problem solving approach to various issues and conflicts faced by him in dealing with society. Questions will utilize the case study approach and determine these aspects. The following broad areas will be covered. Okay, so the main area of this particular aim of this particular paper is to evaluate the problem solving capacity of a student. Okay. Now towards this, when it comes to this particular paper, again this paper is a 250 marks paper. The paper is divided into section A and section B. Now section A, it is the theory part. The theory part will contain 130 marks. So there would be 13 questions of 10 marks each. Okay, so 13 theory questions of 10 mark each, and in part 2 we will have case studies. So case studies, there will be roughly 6 case studies of 20 marks each. Okay. Now the important thing is that there is a kind of interdependability between these two parts. In the first part, when we write the theory, it is very important that we need to substantiate our answers with the right examples. And in the second part, when we do case studies, we need to substantiate our case studies, our point of view, our opinions, our perspective with what? The theory part. Okay, so these two parts are not standalone. There is a type of what? Interrelation between those two parts. Okay. Now, when we look into the syllabus, this is the syllabus. If you can see that I have given 3 different colors. Chapters 1 to 6 I have given a blue tint, chapters 7 and 8 I have given a green tint, and the last chapter I have given a orange tint. Now what is the purpose of it? See, broadly we can divide the entire syllabus into 3 parts. Now the first part that I have given in blue, that comprises of ethics and human interface. We try to understand what ethics is. Okay, now ethics is what? A systematic study of what is right and what is wrong to achieve human as well as societal well-being. Okay. Then we come across what happens when a person becomes ethical. We will study a number of theories and perspectives, all those things we will study in the first chapter. Second chapter we will study human values. Values means what? What a person consider important in their life. That is what is called as what? Human values. Then we have 2 terms, Then we have 2 terms, attitude and aptitude. Okay. Now don't confuse these two. One is what? Attitude, other is what? Aptitude. Now aptitude we already studied. Aptitude means what? Our inborn potential or skill is called as what? Aptitude. Now attitude means what? The way we respond to something, that is called as what? Attitude. So we have 2 chapters. One is attitude, other is aptitude. Then we have a chapter, emotional intelligence. Now as human beings we are emotional beings, and the emotions can be mobilized in a, like, our life hugely depends on how we manage our emotions. So all those details we will study in this particular chapter, emotional intelligence. Then we have a chapter, contributions of moral thinkers and philosophers from India and the world. So this is primarily the theoretical part. Okay. So we study all the theoretical part, and in chapter 7 and 8 what we are going to do is that these theoretical part we are going to apply in administration and governance. In administration and governance we will be applying what? These concepts, that is public and civil service values and ethics in public administration, and what? Probity in governance. And the last chapter what we will be doing is that we would be solving case studies. That depends on what? All these chapters. Okay, so that is the overview regarding this particular chapter. Now for the last many years, like iLearn students, they have been consistently scoring high marks in ethics paper. Okay. Last year we have Shailesh, he scored 157, the all India highest mark was 162. We have Anu Joshi, she scored 152 marks. So consistently we are getting good marks when it comes to what? One approach that we use to solve ethics paper is something called a framework approach, because when it comes to ethics question, the difficulty is what? Trying to come up with answers. So I follow something called as, I teach something called as a framework approach, which will help you to easily what? Answer questions. So this is one example of a framework, like the entire syllabus is divided, is present in a format. So by using certain techniques we would be able to easily come up with what? Answer. So I'll discuss the details, some more, I'll give some more details towards the end. So I'll show a rough question. So like previous year question, like if a country is to be corruption free and become a nation of beautiful minds, I strongly feel that there are 3 societal members who can make a difference. They are the father, the mother and the teacher. So this is a quote by APJ Abdul Kalam. The question is what? Analyze. Okay. And the question, like anger is a harmful negative emotion. It is injurious to both personal and work life. Now, this particular question, it's from the chapter emotional. Discuss how it leads to negative emotions and undesirable behavior. How can it be managed and controlled? Last question again, the Right to Information Act is not all about citizens empowerment alone. It is essentially redefines the concept of accountability. This is from the chapter probability income. So, these are some sample questions. Don't worry, okay. We have a very systematic answer writing approach that will help you to what easily address these questions. Now, this is an example of a case study question. So, this case study is about an old, this case study is about an old and illiterate woman. Okay. Now, this old and illiterate woman, you are a officer. Now, this old and illiterate woman comes to you to avail a particular government service, and to avail that particular service, she need to have certain documents. She does not have supporting document, but you know that what this particular woman's case is genuine. Okay. Now, she has no documents to show that she fulfills the eligibility of the criteria. It's clear case of what violation of human rules, but denying her the support would be cruel and inhuman. So, the ethical dilemma that you have is that on one side you need to show humanitarian consideration, but on the other side you should uphold what the rule of law. Okay. So, can you think of a rational way to resolve this dilemma? Give your reasons. This is an example of what case studies. Okay. So, I just given you two set of questions from each session, so that what you will get an idea regarding this particular paper. Okay. Now, as I have stated that we have a very systematic approach when it comes to covering the GS4 paper. Consistently we have been getting very high marks for this particular paper. One, like the syllabus would be 100% covered. You would be given handouts. There would be handout for every topic in this particular given in the syllabus. So, that is why handout covering the entire syllabus. We have a framework based answer writing practice. Okay. The biggest challenge when it comes to ethics is like coming up with the right points. So, we have a very systematic framework based approach that will help you to easily frame points when it comes to what answers, both in the case of quotation based question as well as the normal questions. And finally, we have what a framework based case study approach. We have a particular framework that helps you to come up with different possibilities and reasons to when it comes to addressing case study. So, a very systematic program that will definitely help you to what score high marks when it comes to GS paper 4. Okay. So, with this we are ending the program. So, next I welcome our academic manager Dias sir. Okay. So, Dias sir would be giving you certain overviews when it comes to mentorship and other programs. With that we would be winding up the session.
Hello everyone. I will give you some information regarding our class timing, mentorship program as well as the optionals. So, on a normal working day, we have two 2-hour sections with a short break in between. Normally, our classes will start at around 9 AM and it will end by around 1:15 PM. Now, we have this mentorship program. So, each batch will be divided into around 15 students group, and each group will be allotted one mentor. And this mentor is a person who has got a lot of experience with respect to UPSC. He is a person who has attempted at least one interview. So, that means he has gone through all the stages of the examination, the prelims, mains as well as the interview. So, there will be various activities taken up as part of the mentorship program, and we can see that the mentorship program will actually evolve with the progress of the course. So, initially we will be focusing on newspaper reading, current affairs, note making, etc. Slowly we will take up previous questions, then we will be looking at answer writing, mains answer writing part. Then finally at the closure of your course we will be again looking at the prelims questions, because the prelims examination will be nearing by that time. Now, the mentorship program is over and above your regular classroom program. It is to complement your classroom sessions. Now, you have this optional subject. You have to select one optional subject, and many of you might be having a lot of confusion regarding which subject to select. Our suggestion is that if you are still confused, we suggest that you should wait till joining a GS course. So after joining a GS course, you will get a lot of information regarding the optionals, and you can also gauge your interest and your abilities. You can go through the previous year question papers from each of the option subjects you have some interest, as well as you can talk to some seniors. Then you can go through the syllabus. Okay. So likewise, the idea is you should finalize a optional on the basis of a lot of information. So you should only come to a conclusion on the basis of proper informations. Now at iLearn, we provide optional subjects, the following optional subjects. We provide classes for geography, political science and international relations, Malayalam, as well as sociology. And after the commencement of the PCM course, we will be conducting detailed optional orientation programs, and you will get a proper understanding regarding the strength and weakness of each of the optionals, as well as your ability with respect to the optionals. So that is regarding the class timing, mentorship program and the optionals. We are slowly concluding the session. We hope that this session was useful. You were able to clarify some of the doubts you are having regarding this particular course, that is a prelims cum mains course. We wish you all very success in your UPSC journey. Thank you all.